Hello everyone and welcome to Journey into an Unknown World. As you all know, I've been embracing changes lately in myself and in other people. Been doing a lot of radio shows for other people's shows as well, and that's been great fun. But in the course of doing all these things, I started to realize that there are a lot of people who are actually fed up, frustrated with the way the world is moving forward. So I wanted to embrace several aspects that have been coming to me, that my spirit guides have been talking to me about, and share some of that information with you. So first of all, I need to explore where we've been. I know I've been talking about the Great Piscean Age, but I'm more about talking about over the last 40 years. So we're going back to 1980. When I think about my return to America in 83, there wasn't any computers. There was only the telephone, and a lot of times those were the heavy old-fashioned ones. No real car phones or anything like that. They were coming out. They were beginning to be popular, and people were using them. And I was thinking, how lazy can people be that they have to have a phone in their car? Surely, walk up the block to a local telephone box and make a call if you haven't got one at home. Or, you got one at home, then you wait till you get home, call someone and sit down with a nice cup of tea and have a nice chat. Little did I know that the computer systems would open up the doors to communication in ways that I'd never even thought about. And of course today, jumping fast forward over 40 years, we've all got these cell phones. They are miniature computers that we wear on our hip or in our pocket. We're walking around with it morning, noon and night because we believe that we might get an important message any minute. What happened to time? When we had only phones in the house or up the street, we would come home and we would have time to think about doing other things. Now, let's add to that telephone scenario the arrival of the computer itself. At that time, I was writing in longhand my journey into, no, that was not the right one. I was writing The Way to Oneness, which became Journey into an Unknown World, The Way to Oneness Revisited, published many times over time. But that was the first book I was writing in longhand. And out of the blue, with circumstances that were going on around my husband, he was given a computer. Now, that computer was an old-fashioned kind of screen, long, big box, went back here and was probably about 2.5 feet long, sat on the desk, and then in front of that I had a keyboard. And so, hey, I could type my book into the computer. And that was a wonderful thing to do, which led to me being able to take that manuscript to the biggest book fair in the world, the Frankfurt Book Fair, where a short version of that story is that having tried to pitch this new book to the world at the time, which was way beyond anything that anyone else understood at that time, and all I got was umpteen rejection letters from publishers where I'd submitted the manuscript. And the interesting thing was, over and over again, that the head of publications, whoever they were, had always written a little note on the end of their generic piece of paper, I guess, that they send out to everybody, saying, sorry, we're not going to publish your book. But on the end of mine, every time it said, I'm sorry, this book is so far advanced, the world is not ready for it, but can I keep the manuscript? Or words to that effect. And of course, I allowed people to keep them. It was one way of sharing information, But more importantly, what I didn't understand at that time was that what I had channeled and written into this book was actually far more remarkable than I even realized at the time. It explains how in the beginning was the oneness, and from the oneness came the energies of the word, sound, vibration, human form. It goes into the male and female energies of our beings. It goes into the manifestation of mental and emotional awareness as independence. And then it goes on into the paranormal, the psychic ability, everything that has since evolved was not manifested at that time. So having all this news and information was in its own way a revelation at that time. And more important to me at that time was not what I'd written and who was reading it, but the fact that the first publishers to print it were German, and within 2 years or so of it being published, having sold about 10,000 copies, when the wall came down in Berlin, suddenly that publisher printed 12,000 copies, softback, and put them into Eastern Berlin. And yes, they sold apparently all out within a week. So I was told. I don't know how true it is, but I will say that I've repeated that because it's nice to know that so many people who'd been locked away from the Western world were suddenly given a book of spiritual awareness in a part of the world where they've been brought, sort of made to become communists. So bringing the spiritual word through Journey into an Unknown World, published in German, was a wonderful thing. Little did I truly understand how enormous that step that was in bringing information to people who'd been locked up for so long. You see, I was more focused on, well, there's all these Westerners who are so locked into their religions, be they Catholic, Protestant, fundamentalist, born-again Christian, the list goes on. I was up against people telling me all the time that I was probably evil or a witch or something throughout my life, and that even though I was a minister, ordained minister and missionary and travelled all over the world teaching and doing all these things, what I didn't realize was that I was actually truly a pioneer in my field. You see, there weren't other people to talk to at that time. So my conversations were always in my head with the oneness. I was learning constantly from them, whether it was to do with the state of mind or the state of heart or soul or actually the body itself. So as the years passed, I was evolving spiritually myself, while also evolving with a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom that I was able to pass on to many people that I was teaching. But of course, as I was evolving, the quality and depth of the things that were coming through me were so far advanced during the 80s, 90s to 2000 that most people weren't aware of what I was teaching. So when I arrived in Japan in '94 to teach the Japanese, I was expecting to have a slow mode of growth with the Japanese because my experiences with every other country I'd been to was always, well, that's very interesting, but, and I'm not sure, and my religion is in the way, and I'd like to believe you, but how do I know that's right, and so on. I walked into Japan and they were ready, eager to learn about their psyche, their psychic ability, their healing skills, and because of that, it became very much a great opportunity for me to channel, create many courses, classes, workshops, and so on, and ultimately to train over 2,000 therapists to be minister practitioners, crystal acupuncture, pterogram therapy therapists, psychology, psychiatry, counseling, the list goes on. But what you don't know is that because they were so clever, they asked more questions. That meant that each time I came back, I needed to have more answers. And so during those years, spirit guides were training me, as it were. I was writing workbooks for them, and we developed many courses and classes over those years. And according to the company, I taught over 20,000 people. Of course, some just did one class here and there and disappeared and didn't see them, and maybe 4 years will go by and they'd suddenly be back and wanting to start learning some more. So it was a bit of a roller coaster in keeping up with who was who and remembering their names and so on. But I can say today that there are easily over of those 20,000 people, 2,000 of them fully trained, fully qualified in Japan, teaching the courses that I gave them, plus some of the other courses from other people that arrived in Japan during my time, and integrated those teachings together with mine and have their own salons and their own classes and their own courses. One of the students that I was happy to train was Reverend Remy Kanai, who has also got a PhD now in metaphysical studies through Sumaris Education Center, which is what I was teaching through, and Universal Christ Church under Spiritualist Church Association for Ministers. So if you're listening to this, I want you to understand that the journey that I went through to be able to be accepted as a person of authority in knowing my field thoroughly was a struggle all the way. Because religions were saying, well, how can you possibly know about the astral and the spirit world and spirit guides, and why should you be able to talk to archangels and Jesus and Siddhartha Buddha when the rest of us just pray? You're just making it up. It can't possibly be true. It was sad for me to know that there were so many people who were in judgment because they were thinking, well, if I've prayed morning, noon and night to God, to Jesus, Mary, or if it's Siddhartha Buddha, or Rama, if it's Hindu, so many different great ones that I was talking with were teaching me the philosophy and theology and spirituality of our evolvement throughout time. And so I, in my own way, would go out into the countries, wherever I was, and give a talk on what I knew, and people would be spellbound, overwhelmed maybe, awed by what was coming through my mouth. And of course they're just looking at me as indeed you're looking at me right now, but I was channeling. Well, I'm not channeling right now, this is actually me. But when I am channeling, the focus and the words that come out of my mouth are not prepared by me. In fact, I don't even know what I'm going to say once I start working. Now, back in the 60s, 70s, I was a trance medium. That means you go into a state of hypnosis where you're so deeply in that, to all intents and purposes, from outsider's point of view, you're sound asleep. And then, out of the blue, the spirit guides will come into my body and work my body, move my hands and do whatever, and then eventually deep breathing or something like that. And before I knew where I was the oneness. I wasn't me, I was them, and I was aware that I was like a blob out in the sky, the room, looking down on my body with someone inside my body talking to the people in the seance circle. Yes, back in those days, that's what people wanted, a circle. And we have to point out that there were a tremendous amount of fakes and flakes that were practicing. And so anyone who is genuinely very good in giving proof of survival, of life after death, to those who are gathered round the circle was highly important and did a great deal of giving of peace and love to those people and leaving them without any shadows of doubts whatsoever, because the information that came from their spirit guides or their loved ones, who passed on, was so accurate that it couldn't be denied. Things that only they knew that nobody else would have known. Well, today, when we fast forward and with all the computers and everybody on Facebook and putting up their photos about, little Mary who's just had her first ice cream, or Uncle Tom who's not doing too well with pancreatitis or something, where's your privacy? It's very difficult, shall we say, for a medium to be in session, or a tarot reader or whatever it is, to come out with something which the person who is having the reading could turn around and say, oh, well, I put that up on Facebook, you could have got that from there. I want something that absolutely nobody knows. And I have to say that those that I trained and studied with in Japan to bring them to a point of high standards were able to give information that nobody had put on the computer or anywhere else in their lives, and give them these perfect little bits of information that would leave no shadows of doubts whatsoever that the person who was the medium was getting accurate information. And of course the people receiving it would go home going, wow, this is amazing. Now, when you think about Japan as a country that had no they had Shinto philosophy and different religions, yes, but they were all of the old style and the old ways. So suddenly having mediums and psychics and healers turning up in their country, teaching them all sorts of new stuff, they were like babies who just couldn't get enough of it. And for me, that was a great joy to be able to teach students who were so accepting of their skills that they evolved so quickly. Now, I'm about to launch a Sumaris Education Center and Universal Christ Church and easypeasysolutions.org. The other two are .coms. Now, the thing about this is my childhood dream was to have a school. And of course, as I got older, I tried to get a school, got a school in England for a while, taught lots of people there, Europe and different places, and ended up coming to America to do the first Mind, Body, Spirit as a keynote speaker in those days. And little did I know when I was coming over there that I was going to end up finding my husband, Stephen Van Coops, carrying him off to England, getting married, and coming back to the States to become a citizen. Well, that turned my life around, because suddenly I'd come from a being well-known medium over England and Europe to nobody had heard of me, to a time when America was really not into the paranormal. In fact, the first Mind, Body, Spirit event that we did at the Shrine with the British team was so new to people that even when I did a demonstration of messages from loved ones on the other side, I was expecting them the Americans to basically want proof of auntie, grandma or someone on the other side. So I'm doing that British style, and all these hands are going up like this, and so I stopped. I said yes, thinking they were going to ask me a question, And sure enough, they did, but not the kind of question I wanted. They were questions like, am I going to move next week? Or should I change my job? Well, at that moment, the spirit guide said to me, okay, forget the spiritual side that you're used to, where you're proving life after death. Instead, tell them to keep their hands up. So all these people around me, and there was probably sort of 10 people, one in front of me and 10 deep. I was standing in a boxing ring, which was the stage of the time. And so there was probably, 400 people around me. And they've all got their hands up like this. And so I do what I'm used to doing, channeling awake messages from all these people. And so what Spirit Guide said to me was, just tell them keep their hands up and you will tell them the answer. Now, bearing in mind, I've not heard a question from anyone, not even Spirit. So here I am, boldly going forward, coming to you. The answer to your question is no, you're not ready. You need to go inward and think a little more. Okay, coming over to you here, the answer is you are in love with him, but you have to learn to trust love. I'm going to come over to you, and I'm turning around and I'm going to all these different people. And I had an hour on that dais, and from what I understand, I must have done probably a good 50 or 60 people. And when I went back to my booth with Valerie Ann Warwood there, who was the original aromatherapist and in my opinion one of the best that I've ever met, who was originally trained by a little old French woman in France, and as a result of that training she brought it back to England at a time when nobody knew what aromatherapy was. I didn't even know the word. For me, making essential oil formulas had basically been go out, pick the flowers, bring the petals back, put them in mum's lard, put them on the window ledge, wait till it's melted, then rub it all together in my hands and rub it on my mum's feet to make her feet better, or whatever was going down. And my mother used to say, how do you know this? And I'd say, my spirit guides told me. And she'd say, well, you always did have a good imagination. She just could not accept that I was talking to a spirit guide. But we used to catch her leaning forward like this and twiddling her hair, and she'd be saying a one-sided conversation like, well, I don't know, I could do this. What? Silence. Yes, but if I did that, this and this would happen, and so on. Silence. And one day my sister and I were laughing because we were peeping through the window at her door and so on. And she caught us and we got slapped. And to this day, she passed over, of course, but to this day I can tell you that she never ever thought she was psychic. But I can tell you, as I evolved and grew, my mother was psychic. She was talking to someone in her head. Now, there are many, many people who come to me and they say, I think I'm turning insane. I'm hearing voices in my head and I find I want to talk to them. Is this a devil, or is this a spirit guide, or is this my grandma, or I don't know who it is. Why am I hearing all these things? Well, the bottom line is you're in a breaking out mode. It's like you've made yourself a promise that when you get to a certain age, you will open up to your psyche, your spirit self, listen to that, and through that connect with your spirit guides, loved ones on the other side, however you're meant to do it. And in that process, start studying it. And when you study it, hey, it roller coasts. Because as you know more, you get more. And as you get more, you learn more. Then you know more, then you get more, and so on. So when you look at me, and I'm 79 now, and I started doing this the moment I was born, apparently. Nurses held me after a bomb had blown up, and got healed. Well, I don't remember it. My mother just told me that. But the bottom line is, I never did anything else. I was always healing, counseling, giving messages to anyone who was war-torn from England being bombed by the Germans throughout the war time. And I remember those bombs going off, and I remember the sounds of the sirens when it was all clear, these kinds of things. And I was only 3.5 when the war ended in May, pushing 4 actually. So, time for me was always something to do with the paranormal. At night, I would go to bed, and I'd just start to get in that twilight, dreamy state, and suddenly there's all these people coming into my room. They've got bandages on, they're crying, they're miserable, they're help me, whining, and I'm like cringing on my bed, a 7, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, it went on for years, and saying, what is it? I can't help you. You're dead. You've got to go to heaven. And then these vortices of energy would appear in my bedroom, always in the same place, in a corner of the room. And then the light would come out, and I would be aware of these people passing past my bed, in droves, going into the light. Now, when you think just how many people were killed in the air raids that were thrown at England throughout the war, once they'd learned the technology to send rockets over. But of course the Germans were coming in way before that, just dropping normal bombs. So yes, London was bombed all the time, and that's all I ever knew. And after the war was over, with so many buildings all derelict and bricks everywhere and so on, I was often told, stay away from those buildings because they're dangerous and they could collapse on you and so on. And so there was also a vague memory of Mother saying, come away, because I know that there's somebody dead in the building. She wasn't saying that. I didn't see dead bodies, but I knew psychically, because sometimes the spirit was standing next to me telling me that they were in there. Or and I would tell my mummy, the spirit's by me, and she would say, okay, darling, let's go now, because she couldn't see them and didn't know they were there, and thought she got a child that's got a vivid imagination, as I said earlier on. So, this was just the way I grew up, with having this entourage of people with me. Without knowing why I was doing it, I was just 100% accepting of it, because when you're that young, you don't doubt yourself. You hear, you know what you see. What you doubt is the people that you're telling that you're seeing and hearing, who just kind of matter-of-factly just push it away as, oh yeah, okay, darling, go play with your doll or something. And so it was very frustrating for me that nobody seemed to take me seriously unless they were someone who was getting a message or a healing from me. And so, guess what? By 7, I loved to heal and counsel people because I got all the attention I wanted. I even got to stand on the dais with my father and brigadier and generals and salute the men as they all marched past, because they made me an honorary member of the Suffolk Regiment for all the healing that I did at the regimental reunion meetings, just by sitting on their laps, getting hot, making them better, or giving them messages about loved ones on the other side. And of course, I do remember giving messages, one particular person who was always reminiscing. I knew more about him as I got older, but as a young child I didn't know too much. But he was always reminiscing about the good old times during the war. And, that was the way the men got through it in that days, because they didn't want to talk about the people who were dead. But this one particular guy, it always seemed that when I sat on his lap and was doing the healing, there was always other soldiers around him. And they told my dad one day, and my dad said, oh, yeah, it's a good girl, just send them to the light. And he seemed to know that they were part of his regiment, men that had died, and they were coming back to be helped to pass over into the oneness. Now let me come forward into now and say, in the parallels of wars like the Middle East, and then in the parallels of, say, the floods, burst dams, all the people that died all of a sudden lately, the fires that have burned people's homes and gotten some of them trapped, and unfortunately, these things, these people, when their bodies are gone, they are running around just the same as if they were in the body, still trying to put out their fire or save their family or protect their household or something. So they don't pass on to the spirit world right away. They feel they have stuff left undone. And so at that point, they might see the family all crying, and they're around saying, hey, I'm here, stop crying, I'm here. But of course the family can't hear them. That's where I would come in and see them and hear them and hear what they're saying, and then talk to the family and say, well, he's actually in the room and he's telling me this and this, and they're like, why do I, like, what, how do you do that? I just can hear him and see him or whatever. But as I got older, I started to see very negative things, sexual, sensual, bad, negative stuff that one won't want to talk about here. And I started to realize just how the dark side was and how negative there was. But I had to go through that in order to really understand the dark and the light are entwined. And today, when I teach my psychic development class, I'm always quick to explain to people just how to protect themselves from earthbound entities who would get into their thoughts and say things like self-esteem, self-worth, and self-value is useless, you'll never amount to anything, to, you're going to be in a plane crash next week when people aren't even flying. You'd be amazed how many people hear things that they actually know, is most unlikely because they're just not going anywhere or doing anything like the messages they hear. But they still worry because why am I hearing these voices that are negative and make me feel negative, and I can't sleep and I can't think straight. I'm always, as I'm thinking, I want to focus on my work, there's some entity in my head giving me a thought of or a feeling of fear, pain, anger, and guilt, so I don't do what I want to do. Well, hey, these negative spirits are just pestering you because they want to be rescued, they want to be helped to go to the oneness. So part of what I teach in the psychic development class is how to help loved ones ascend into the spirit world, the oneness, heaven, whatever you want to call it. I also teach in the psychic development class how to protect yourself from that kind of entity that wants to prey on you and weigh you down. Why do they do that? So they can get your energy and give their spirit a little bit more of a boost to stay around a bit longer. Now that doesn't mean that their spirit guides aren't around them, of course they are. But every time the spirit guide goes up to them and says, come on, it's time to go to spirit world, they're like, no, I can't leave, my wife is still crying, or my kids are wondering what's happened to me, I need to get them to know I'm here, I'm okay, I see them. The spirit guides cannot break the laws. The first law is no one fragment, you're a fragment, I'm a fragment, no one fragment shall invade the space of another at any time on any level. And so a spirit guide, an archangel, anyone you want to call really, can turn up and say, I'm here for you, want to come with me. But if that individual spirit is saying, no, I'm not done here, I've still got work to do on this earth, even though my body's gone, I want to be here, and I may even be pestering people, but I'm testing them in some way. And I can surely tell you that many of the earthbound spirits that were brought to me via the spirit guides, their spirit guides, were often complaining and miserable. Why are you bringing me here? I don't want to be here, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, being a child and having the vortex in the room, they were naturally drawn to it once they saw others going into it, and so they were going through to the other side. And by the way, here's a little story. I had many cats here in Havasu, and I had one that was very tied to my husband, who was the last cat we had, named Chico. And after he passed, we saw him in our house on several occasions, and I said to Steve, he has to go into the light. And he would say, well, I love him and I feel him and I like having him around. And I'd say, well, you're keeping him here. He needs to go to the spirit world. And that's no different for the humans. We hold on to them, praying, I hope you're safe, Mom. Are you there? Are you watching over me? I need to know you're protecting me because I'm afraid. Well, Mum can't leave when she hears all that, you know. So she's going to stay, and it's not long before they get stuck. Which is why it's very important that you have closure at a funeral and wish them well and the joy on into the astral and the spirit world. So, you know, these kinds of things in modern idioms today, with so many people dying from different diseases and tragedies and hazards and so on and so forth, we're actually looking at a lot of people yet again who are not making it over all the way to the spirit world. So at night I'm often busy working, rescuing these spirits and taking them to heaven. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm tired because I've been working all night, been out of body, talking with them. I could tell you 101 different scenarios, but here's one that I think you'll relate to. Natalie Wood was a very famous actress, and I'd gone to bed in England, and all of a sudden I'd come out of body and I was in water, and I could see this woman was swimming in the wrong direction, and I had this overwhelming desire that I had to save her. So I'm swimming towards her and I'm trying to tell her, turn around, you're going the wrong way, turn around, turn around. And she kept going, swimming away from me, and I knew we were underneath some sort of wood slats, and she couldn't get up, and she wasn't going to run out of oxygen. So again, I'm trying to get her to turn around, and then the next thing I know, she's drowned. And so now she sees me, and I said to her, you know, you have to come with me now. You shouldn't have fallen in the water. And I knew she was drunk. And so anyway, we went to Spirit World, and I left her there. And I looked at her face now, because I was in the Spirit World, and I had it well in my brain box, as it were. And I was feeling so much sadness, because I felt that we had a connection, but I didn't know what it was consciously. I just knew it felt, that kind of thing. So a day or what was it? No, the next morning, kids are in school. I've put the TV on. I've got a pile of ironing to do, and TV in England isn't like in America. It didn't come on till late, like 10 o'clock in the morning, and go for 10 at night. 12 hours of entertainment. And the first thing that comes on is the news. And there is the face of the woman that I had rescued the night before. And it was Natalie. And I, oh my God, that's the person I saved. Well, fast forward, I come to America a lot later, and they was all around the same time, but later. And there's all these little magazines by the counters, Inquirer and things like that I know today. But what was happening was there was her face on every one of them, and the short version of this story is I was trying to get the message from Natalie, who had come back to me and told me to tell her husband. Well, I had no idea who she was married to. Well, the short version of this was I followed a lead, and the close I got to the person I was supposed to tell was Stephanie Powers. And on that day, as she walked out of the yoga center at the back, I walked in the front door. That was that close, but I couldn't get the message to her. And I found out little by little that they were all friends, her and her husband and Natalie and so on. So, fast forward, a lot of times later, I'm up in Summerland, and we're doing a psychic fair, and into that comes Juliet Mills. And Juliet sits down, and suddenly I've got Natalie in my head, and so I tell her I have to tell this whole story, more details than I'm giving you here. And I said, I'm sorry, but I just have to tell you all this at the end of what I'd said. And I said, I don't know exactly why, but I had to tell you that. And she then told me that she and Natalie were best friends. So, you see, there was closure eventually because Juliet could pass it on. So what we have to understand is that the oneness moves us through circumstances so that we'll learn, number one, more about our skills and our abilities. Number two, how to give your information in a way to people who are able to receive it instead of reject you. And number three, how to work with higher master guides, spiritual entities of ascension, as well as to protect you from the dark side, negative entities who would in some way steal your energy given half a chance. But if you've learned how to master all this and been trained by people who actually know what they're talking about, then you can become a very good reader, medium, and so on. Now, if I go back again into the 60s, the only pack of tarot cards that were around was the Waite pack and the Marseille pack. And what I learned in those days was that you had to get your tarots out because there was just circles and batons, and I'm trying to visualize them. So we had coins, batons or wands, and hearts, there was hearts there, and the clubs. So swords. So you had to have a book and read what does the Eight of clubs mean, or the Eight of hearts mean. So that's how I was fiddling with this, and then all of a sudden trying to learn all these cards, and then Spirit Guide said to me, put them down, we'll work with you. And so I put them down, just however I shuffled them and put the book away and laid them out and sat down and just looked at them, and next thing I know, Spirit's in my head, and I'm reading not just the cards, what they mean, but also putting them all together and making absolute sense of how to read the tarot cards. Well, that followed with other cards eventually that people were making. And today there are so many tarot cards made by so many people, individuals, that the true essence of the original tarot cards has been lost. So what am I saying? Each tarot card in the original pack is a tome, a book of knowledge and wisdom on its own. So when I was teaching the Americans back in 1984 how to read the tarot, I was using the Waite pack. And then from there, because there were some pictures in that, and then from there the Toth pack came out, Aleister Crowley's Toth pack. That's an interesting story, by the way. Aleister Crowley was not of the dark. He was like me. He very much learned that if one is going to aspire to be in the light, up here, then one has also to understand and master the dark down here. So I can't get it all, but extremes. And so as you are out a bit more, you get a bit more dark. Out a bit more in the light, down a bit more dark. The ultimate thing is you've got to be able to know how to embellish both and work with both and bring insights and wisdom to anyone who is seeking advice. So if you've got, say, a couple that's breaking up and they're arguing and they can't see the wood for the trees, to be an ombudsman means you have to be able to understand their dark ideas, their dark doubts and fears. At the same time, you have to see the fear of choice, of change, surrender and evolvement into a new dynamic. And to be a counsellor in such depth means that you have to have gone through all of that yourself. So yes, 2 marriages, I won't bore you with all the detail, but hell. 4 kids, wonderful kids, but such a handful. All extrovert, flamboyant, uncontrollable, do what they want. Today they're amazing men. But if they hadn't have been like that, they wouldn't have gone through the dark of themselves, and they wouldn't have come to understand and be the way they are as adults. In the same way, for me, though I wasn't disobedient like my children were, but I was definitely disobedient in my mind. The rules and regulations that I had to follow were too strict in my opinion. So I would escape off out into the local park or somewhere to be in my own space and then sit with Spirit and get their feedback on what was going on. So a lot of times I was educated more by Spirit than I was by any teachers in school or my parents. But I am an anomaly by most people's count because most people can't do what I'm doing. However, I am now prepared to teach the young mothers of today who are birthing young babies, because these children coming in are going to be like me. They're going to be very, very psychic by 2 years old, talking away, telling you messages from the other side, talking about things they see in their head that you don't even know what they're talking about, and then 2 or 3 days they say, look, that's what I was talking about, and you look and go, oh my goodness, fits perfectly. So we've got lots of TV shows, paranormal topics. We've got fear-mongering with aliens and spirit entities that are going to gobble you up and put take your life away from you, whatever. We've been through all of that. Now we're starting to get movies that are coming across with messages about sharing divine love, integrating our species. More and more movies are not, even Shakespeare, for example. I watched something recently where the original was written for white people, because Shakespeare was white and there weren't many foreigners unless they were from Europe or something, and they were written into his stories. But today, you can see any of these shows, and I love it because nobody's looking for what color their skin is. What we're looking for is their talent and skills. So the more movies we see with mixed families and activities that show the integration of our species, the better we'll be able to understand we are the human race, one race. So that will come in probably 150 years to 200 years from now, but we're going to take a long time to get over the Piscean age. And some of you will have listened to my lecture on the great Piscean age, and now we're like one day in the great Aquarian age, so we've got a long way to go to understand and learn the lessons that the Aquarian age brings us, of being able to understand by listening, making notes, paying attention, when it's your turn, no interrupting, ask questions, listen well for the responses. If you're the teacher, don't force your information on people, but rather say something and then give a pause and say, do you understand? Is it clear? Do you have any questions about that part before we move on to the next part, and so on. I know I learned all that with my spirit guides working through me, and it was a very important lesson to learn, because when I grew up, you were told you sit in that class, you don't ask questions, you do exactly what the teacher says. If you don't, you're being punished with writing lines or stay after school and do something else, that the teacher wants you to do for them. It was just, a hellhole of a place in many ways to be in those days at school, because the teachers were fixed on their whatever it is they're teaching, curriculum, find the word, and you've got to do it in a certain way for a certain reason all the time, and if you don't come up to their standard, then you must be lousy and useless and hopeless. I'm afraid I was more often lousy, useless and hopeless because, whatever they wanted me to write about or learn about wasn't conducive to where I was going in my mind. Why would I want to write about the Corn Laws and stuff in history when I was much more interested in how the Great Plague of London actually manifested in 1664, get the right year, because of the rats and so on, and how did the rats get on the ships in the first place? These are the sort of ways I used to think. I wasn't interested in the fact that the country lost X number of pounds in trade and whatever else was going on in Parliament at the time. Yes, that was how thorough my education was. We had to know leadership qualities, we had to know why the upper class took charge and the middle class ran the shops and factories, and the working class are in the factories or washing houses or even worse, underground mining. And everyone was considered part of the whole and conducive to the way of the whole was functioning. And in many ways it was good, because things did get done. But not everyone got fed, not everyone got educated, not everyone had a roof over their head. So there was a lot wrong with the system. And we have been fighting that ever since, with new generations being born, and with those of us who are psychic, we've been trying to get people to understand that yes, we are our ancestors. Yes, we do have the DNA within us. Yes, we do have their talents and skills. But no, we don't have to use them in copycat mode the way they did. We can transform ourselves. We can teach things in a different way. So, for example, instead of having some teacher sit in front of me and make me just listen to a boring lecture for an hour, what do? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, okay, I'm talking for 5 minutes, pause. Did you all understand that? Any questions about that before I move on? Anybody written some notes down, a sidebar? I want feedback. I want to know what they are going through before I take them to the next point of the class. So when I'm teaching, I try to leave my students with a lot of information in a way that makes sense to them, so that they can go home and practice right away, knowing that they've absorbed 90% of what I said rather than only 10%, which was the average way that most people learn in school back in the last century. Now today, I'm concerned because children are going to school very psychic, very intuitive. They're learning online through computers, which is okay, but there isn't any interaction in terms of whatever they're feeling or thinking. They're just looking, they're used to staring at that screen and taking in the information. But how does their heart feel about it? How's their emotions in terms of dealing with all these facts coming at them? Well, what we all need, and of course with the virus we haven't had that opportunity, is contact. We all need to see a smiley face, hear and touch, body language, the way we talk and move and use our hands. And of course, hey, youngsters are going to roll in the grass and have fun laughing and joking over a ball game or something. And all of that's been taken away from them. So what is this Aquarian age bringing in right now to these young ones? It's actually bringing discipline. By staying at home, the first discipline a child has to learn, apart from education, is to amuse self. I know when my kids were young, they didn't have to amuse themselves because they could play on the street, and my street was quiet, so there wasn't any danger of getting run over or anything. It was a dead-end kind of place. Everywhere was quiet. So I didn't have to worry. They could ride their bikes up and down the street, and they could do whatever they want. But today, it's not like that. All those streets are full of cars parked all the way down the roads. Everyone has a permit to park. It's the same in America. Every big city, you can't park. You're driving around for hours. You pay a fortune to park your car. Maybe you're lucky if your town has got the subway, but not every town does have the subway. So transport and convenience has changed. Now businessmen think nothing of hopping on a plane for, say, LA, go up to San Francisco, do a business deal, hop back on the plane, come back home. Back in my day, when I was that young person, to get on the plane was a voyage into the unknown. You had to dress up like you're going to church. You had to look tidy and neat and prim and proper when you get on the plane. And when you go there, you have to, even if you're scared, you can't look scared, you have to smile and say, yes, I'm fine, thank you very much, I'm very, very fine. Even though you're like this, and you take off because you've never done it before. Maiden voyage into the unknown. Well, of course, over the years I flew thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. Got myself lots of free flights and things as well because of that. But the bottom line was, what was I doing while I was on that plane? Yep, writing my books, channeling information that Spirit wanted me to have for my students when I arrived. I was always working, and I've always been working. Now, one of the things that I had to do, part of my growth in psychic awareness, was to deprogram my RNA. RNA is how your neural impulses are stored in your muscles, nerve endings. So, for example, if someone tells me a story, my facial expression could be, oh, it could be, no, or it could be, I'm not sure about that. Now, I happen to have a very expressive personality because I'm a high physical. And that's because I had two parents who were very physical. Some people have two parents who are intellectual. So it doesn't get to be much hugging and enjoying pleasant presence of one another. It's more like, I've got my paper, Mummy's got her book, and kids got homework. And they accept it. But where's the touching? Where's the physicality of communication? So when I say the children are at home right now, what the Aquarian age is bringing is expression. They've got to watch the screen. They've got to read their eyes. They've got to see what the facial muscles are saying and doing, because we can't see the body. This is below camera, okay? So we don't know what's going on below the body. Now, reading the face is not just looking at expressions, it's the eyes. The eyes are the mirror image of the soul. Do they look happy and sweet and comfortable, or do they look tired? Now, my eyes look tired right now. Why? It's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm making this, and I've got contacts in that are drying out. Oh, that's better. See? So just having contacts in your eyes can make a difference if your eyes are dry. Okay? So squinting, I've seen people squinting a lot when they're reading. That means they've got eye strain. Or maybe they're sniffing. Right? People sniff in different ways. There's insight in the way they do it. I've got these smiley lines here because I'm always smiling. See, there's my smiley lines. Okay? But if I'm serious, now I look miserable. Well, lines come with character and building as you get older and so on. But the bottom line is those lines will mirror image the state of mind. So if you're 90% miserable all the time, you're going to have lines that make your face look miserable. Even when you're not smiling or doing anything, it's like your face has gone into a mask. Now, if I can do that, like, that's just being still, okay? You can see there's no expression in my face, but still my eyes are doing something. So when you're learning psychic ability, you do need to understand body language, and one of the training courses that people can learn is the NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. Well, I integrate that with my psychic development because I think it's very important that we all understand body language, expressions, nods of head, and family traits, and so on. So RNA is something that we inherit by observation, by empathy, by sympathy as soon as we're out of the womb. And of course, we don't know we're doing it at that young age, but the minute mummy holds baby or daddy holds baby or siblings are playing with baby, there are woo expressions, and that makes the baby laugh and smile. And then there's other days when mummy's angry because maybe trash didn't go or something, and baby can feel that and starts crying. So there's a lot to be said for understanding how a mother is going to be aware of wanting to be pregnant long before she actually is pregnant, which is why I wrote my book, Discover Your Baby's Spirit, because in there I'm talking about the 5 types of children that are born right now: hero, star, indigo, crystal, and liquid crystal children. The liquid crystal children are like me, very psychic, very intuitive, very sensitive, very aware, and listening to spirit guides. The crystal kids, they're psychic, but they're impatient, and they get frustrated, they get negative, they need activities. They're the doers. So they're not going to sit and listen so well unless you're hooked into something they're into at that moment. So lessons come in short bursts, but in time, the crystal child will be supporting the liquid crystal children. So this will happen as the world evolves. The indigo children are the psychic readers, counselors, healers, people who investigate medicine, alternative stuff, whatever it is. And of course I'm staying in my field, but that doesn't mean they're limited to that. They could be investigating equipment, machinery, computers, which is what we've got today. But back when I was a child, the crystal children who weren't named as that then were considered the builders of the new world. They were doing the infrastructure, if you like. So the psychics were not many of us, so they were mostly the ministers, religious, doctors, and of course mostly men. And the women, they were followers of the priests, whatever they were in their religions, and doers of servicing the church or whatever it is that they could do. And if you're in a segregate kind of religion where the men are on one side and the women on the other, then that was relative to their religion, but the women still had their leadership within their group, as indeed the men did. So that's gone now. The integration of our male-female energy has been a battle long fought since the 1800s through now. And it's only now that women are in government all over the world. They're in scientific projects like flying to the moon or wherever they want to go. And then the truck drivers, in the Arctic, driving on flimsy ice, and they're 4'5" or something, tiddly people, and yet they can manage those great trucks and drive with such skill. So yes, women and men are the same, because we can incarnate in one life as a woman and the next life as a man. So we all know male and female energy, but when we're born, we are conditioned. You got a BB, you're a female. You got a different BB, you're a male. Okay? And then after that, it's, well, okay, you got to have your hair in a certain style, and you've got to look, in a certain way, for us to know that you are a girl or a boy. And so here's some toys. These toys are all pretty dolls and dress-up things, just like mummy. So you've got your baby doll, just like mummy. And hey, here's this little boy. He's got balls and guns and aeroplanes, and just like daddy, he's going to go to work in the office, and he's going to do all sorts of wonderful things one day. So we have to grow up and be ready to take those roles on. And that was very much the way of 3,500 years of the Piscean age. But now we're in the Aquarian age, and so we're not separating the species of mankind into your female, male. What we've been doing is saying we're different cultures. We have different religions, we have different philosophies. Well, we've got to a point where we put that so much in the loop between the Pisces and Aquarian age overlap. We've been doing that for the last 12 years. And so we have some of the Piscean age and some of the Aquarian age coming in, i.e. technical stuff with the Aquarian age. So here we are now embracing philosophy, theology, spirituality, psychic ability, any kind of essential alternative method of healing, as well as trying to integrate it with surgeries and other medications that are harmful. So you can see the harmful medications and the unnecessary surgeries are the Piscean age, while on the other side of the overlap was the Aquarian age, saying go out and buy some berries and eat those instead, and don't have an antibiotic, go and get a natural one from the herb shop. Start putting all your probiotics and prebiotics in your body, because there's that big bug going on around and you don't want to get it. Okay? For myself, I've been using colloidal silver in distilled water over the last 2 years. In fact, I was using it way before that. It's a known thing that will kill every bug in your body. And then when you put it in colloidal silver in distilled water and drink it, it kills within 2 hours every bug in your body. All your enzymes, all your probiotics, they're all gone. So after you've got that in the blood, going around your blood, all your LDLs are cleared out, so your vessels are nice and clean, you're healthy. All you have to do now is allow all your organs to rebuild. So what you can do then is start working with yourself, different therapies. You can do hypnosis, meditations, to calm your mind and be more relaxed. You could put your prebiotics and probiotic yogurts and things back in your body, so you start building up your immune system. I had irritable bowel syndrome, and I used slippery elm for that. Got myself free of that years ago. Traveling and bugs and all sorts of things that you get from different countries. You got to take care of yourself, and I've always done that. So trial and effort sometimes, because you think, gosh, why did I get that, and so on, and you figure it out, because usually what's behind your illness is a mindset, an emotional, mental attitude you've learned as growing up kid or later in the midlife crisis, and you've stuck to it and you believe it, and every day you put fuel on the fire by reiterating it to yourself, and so you get ill and sick and worn out and tired and exhausted, and then your system starts to break down. But if you say, why do I keep thinking about these negatives? I don't need to. I can have a new point of view. I can go out and study something else and change my attitude about myself, fix my hair up, put on a new dress or a new suit, whatever your side of the fence you're on, with your personality, your character, and whether you're straight, gay, or whatever. It doesn't come into it. It's about you enjoying you doing what you know you do well, and in the process of doing that, sharing it with anyone who wants to learn from you or understand how you're doing it. No more of this is my little deal, and I don't want someone stealing it and walking off with it, and I want $1 million for it, blah, blah, blah. No, the Aquarian ages share it openly and communally. We all get the money. We all share in it. Well, in a way, we can look back and see pyramid sales and things like that, and where the people were diligent and did put their mouth and mind where they believed it should be and applied themselves, they made profit. But those who were like, I just want to do it and hope the money will fall in my lap and I don't want to do all the hard work, they lost what they invested. So it is what we create, it is what we do. And the Aquarian age is actually here to get us to do what we want to do, and do it with joy and pleasure. So what's the first job we all want to do? Clean up this earth. So whether we just go out and buy a tree and plant it in our road or block or something, or whether we actually go and help some old girl that's stuck in that place and got loads of pack ratting going on, and clean out their house and make her understand that she can't live like this because it's making her sick and ill, and bugs and germs are rampant. We've all got the opportunity to help someone if we just open our eyes up to the fact that there is on our own street somewhere someone needing help. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I had a border burst, and I was running around like a mad girl because I didn't know when to turn off the water, which happened to be outside, I found eventually. But I had to go and bang my neighbour up at 2 in the morning, and this was a new neighbour, has only just moved in, hadn't met. But he helped me. He was a good neighbour. Water was everywhere. He even vacuumed up all the water and got the carpet almost dry for me, working with me, sopping up everything, fixed the leak, did everything for me, and was with me for 3 hours doing all that. That's a neighbour, and that's really something we need to understand. We must be good neighbours. In England, when I was young, everybody knew everybody, and you stop and chat on the street. We don't do that anymore. Why? We're all in cars, we're all running around and hurrying up somewhere. And when we do see the neighbour, hi, how are you? Fine, goodbye, I'm in the house. We don't visit, we don't sit and have a cup of tea, and catch up. How are you doing? What's going on? We've lost neighbourly abilities. And if we've lost neighbourly abilities, we've lost the ability to socialise and entwine and expand our world. Our world becomes limited, restricted by all the so-called necessary things that we've been trained to do that eat up the hours of the day that we live. So by the end of the day, we're all shot, we're exhausted. What do? Sit in front of a TV and watch some more pain and suffering and some TV show about cops and robbers, or journeying into space and suffocating because your spaceship's about to blow up. I've been watching some of those and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I hope I sleep tonight. Well, whatever we see, whatever we hear, whatever we feel through the day does weigh on our mind at night. And when we get the first few minutes to an hour of moseying, tossing and turning, trying to get to sleep, is all about dumping that which you already know that you've experienced yet again, one more time. And by the time you've kind of figured out consciously what is important and what isn't, you're probably drifting to sleep. And the things that are still important will go into your subconscious mind, where you'll associate images, and that means you're dreaming. And if you wake up somewhere in the early hours of the morning, like 2 or 3 in the morning, out of a dream, then that's likely to be you giving yourself some information in a prophetic way to go do something in your future, or expect something to happen in your future. So then you go back into REM state, and that's what you're dreaming about. And then you go into a deep sleep again, and you wake up in the morning with more dreams. If you're lucky to remember them, those are the dreams where you're telling yourself, face your fears, move on, make changes. Your lifestyle isn't the way you want it, so stop holding on to what was. Get up, go out, and do something. Here's an example. A person said to me, I woke up and I was having this dream. I was flying on a holiday and the plane crashed. So I said, well, what happened then? She said, well, I woke up, I was scared. So I said, well, are you going on the plane? Are you making a journey? So she said, yes, I am. So I said, okay, now you're wide awake. Do you really feel that your plane is going to crash? And she sat there for a second or two thinking about it and said, actually, no. She said, I think it's someone else's plane. Okay. Anyway, she went on a holiday, she flew there, flew back, and everything was wonderful, had a wonderful time. Okay. And then, it was a little later, there was a plane that landed in the Hudson. I'm sure you'll remember that. A miracle, miracle, they got them out. So, you see, she could have had that dream, and it could have been that plane crashing, but in the dream, it wasn't a death dream. It was a lesson dream. It was saying, we survived. Okay? So I've got to say here that if you're thinking that some of the things I've said today have interested you enough to think that you would like to develop your psychic skills, then I have made this show because I want you to understand that I'm setting you up in a way to stimulate you through this show to ask yourself this question: am I ready to investigate my own psychic ability? Am I ready to listen to Dr. Margaret and learn from her and develop my psychic skills so that I can improve the quality of my life, reach out to new things, the dawn of a greater life, if you like, coming towards you. And if you think you are ready for that, then go to easypeasysolutions.org. That's EASYPEASY solutions spelled .org. There you're going to find a page where I'd like you to sign in, saying that you're interested in developing your psychic ability. Leave me your phone number and your email, because I will respond to you personally. Now, where I'm at right now, we're putting these up. I'm going to start the first class on August the 8th. We're going to do an intro part where you'll understand a little bit about what the psychic skills are, how you can use them to help yourself, how you can protect yourself from the dark side, how you can talk to your spirit guides. And we'll do all that in a couple of hours, and it's free. Okay? So if you'd like to come and learn from me on August the 8th, go to easypeasysolutions.org and sign up. Now, I will send you a workbook, which is basically what I'm going to teach you on that day. But I'll also give you another book, a workbook, that is for you to, in your own time, sit down with and review yourself up till now and write in that workbook what you think about yourself and your life and so on. I want you also, when you get that download of that book, to keep the original clean copy, because in the future, if you keep working with me, I'll ask you to fill that out again so that you can make comparisons and see how much you've improved and grown in yourself, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Now, once you've done the talk, if you like and want to continue, I'll have a workshop that you can attend, and that will take you into more understanding of self-protection, spirit guides, the oneness, heaven, and things like that. And then if you really like it and you've gone through that, you'll get a certificate, and that will be sent in the mail to you. I should say online mail, and you can print it. But when it gets to the diplomas, level 2, psychic development, you'll get a diploma for the completion of 1 and 2. That will be sent in the mail with stamps and everything. So what are you doing? You are acquiring different diplomas as you go through my courses. The psychic development alone has 4 levels. If you've survived that and you want to become a reader of the oneness and know the DNA coding and how to deal with the RNA code in NLP, there'll be more classes to go on. So there are actually 5 levels to the oneness course as well. And there are many other courses with my crystals and things, and over time I'm going to get those going, but I can only do so much at a time. So right now, easypeasysolutions.org is a place to go for beginners intro talk. And if you're interested in going further, leave your message there, and we'll roll you over to, for more serious education, to samariseducationcenter.com, where those will be the more advanced classes that you will attend. If you're wanting to be a minister practitioner, where you learn to use your psyche, but you also go on to understand how to entwine it with religion and philosophy and theology, because you're counseling someone who is, say, attending a Catholic church, you've got to know all that kind of thing. If you wanted to become an ordained minister, there's another year to do after that, where I have to teach you how to write a sermon and how to hold a service and all the things that come with being a minister. So that's a possibility down the road as you develop your psychic skills. So on that note, I want to say to you that you've got the 3 websites that I've mentioned, easypeasysolutions.org, you've got universalchristchurch.com for the philosophy and religious side, and then you've got Samaris Education Center for the paranormal, normal things that you might want to study with me in metaphysical studies. Also, my partner on our radio show, Ask Dr. Margaret, Dr. Margaret and Dr. Katie Speaks. I've got so many things in my head. And then we've got Katie Kamara, Reverend and Dr. Katie Kamara. She has somafusionmedia.com. If you go there, you'll find her other links, as well as she's working with me on the sites I've mentioned prior. So on that note, I'm going to end here and let you get this up so you can listen to it, and hopefully we'll sign up and want to study with me. Okay? Be well, be happy, enjoy. Bye.